Okay, it's 1:30 on April 28th, and this is a meeting of the Town Council Financial Oversight Budget Committee. Present are myself, Jim Broderick,
Christine Sonier, co-chair.
Kathy Hill, Town Council.
Rich Fitzgerald.
Dawn Starks.
and special guest,
Sarah Julia.
and our agenda will be discussing the school department budget. So, and we also have visitors. Thank you. Our first order of business is the review and approval of the minutes of our April 21st meeting. And first of all, I just want to commend Dawn for a thorough job.
Absolutely.
There is a correction that has been made. Thank you, Chris, for telling me that Kathy was the one to remind us all to send the meeting minutes to Jackie after we're all done. So I made that change in my version in my computer.
Right.
If there's any other changes, I will make them.
So I just had one question.
Sure.
On page 4, there's a sentence. Jim mentioned that time was getting short for the meeting.
Yeah, right.
I wasn't sure what meeting it was.
Yeah, I took it for
This
this,
meeting,
you're keeping us on task.
I can clarify. It led into the next,
Short for the meeting that we were in.
yes, because the next one explains why we then skipped from, we were going line item, and then we decided it was pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
So
right.
just so whoever read it would know, I can clear that up too. That's why we did what we did.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
way.
you were very efficient, keeping us on task there, Jim.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what meeting it was referring to. Come on in, please. Yeah. You can pepper the chairs.
Okay, thank you.
I might have to grab another one.
No, please don't. Let's bring the chairs.
Grab another chair, Heather.
Probably room for more chairs.
Come in, come in.
You don't get a chair, so you know it's.
I sit on.
Chivalry is not dead.
Thank you. He is a true gentleman. Thank you, Gordon. Oh, Sarah. Thank you.
Fantastic.
We'll just, we're just going through some business housekeeping, and then we'll move into our discussion. So we had a discussion about the minutes, and Rich, were you going to propose?
I was going to propose a motion to approve the minutes of 4/21/22.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
And is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I guess we have to do a roll call vote, and though we're in person, we actually still have a Zoom capability. So, Chris?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes, I also want to commend Chris Soni for putting together that list of the town administrators. Yeah, following with us, so very well done, Chris, also.
Agreed. Dawn?
Yes.
All right, and Jim, yes. So the minutes are approved. The second item, and we had tried to change this from our modus operandi last year, was to a kind of a commitment to discuss a little bit our thoughts on the budgets as we review them with the department heads or the boards, at least to get some reaction to it. So we had a very thorough meeting last week, so we really didn't have time to do that. So we had said we'd try to discuss it a little bit today. So this would regard the Dpw budgets and the capital budgets. So let's talk about the Dpw budgets.
Can I
Yes,
just
sir.
clarify two figures? If I'm correct, I heard that of this budget, which totals $9 million, that 7.23 is uncontrollable. It's from third parties, et cetera.
Yep.
So it's really 1.7 million that we have to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second thing, is, am I correct, it's a 13.3% increase?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make sure, okay.
And much of their uncontrollables are the water fees. Reactions?
Bruce was so thorough in his discussion of the budget, going over it with us item by item. I generally got the impression that it was all pretty justified, and he's still short personnel. Can't get mechanics for the department as yet. Hiring for him is just as tough as everybody else, I guess. I'm in favor of approving his budget as submitted.
I did like your comment, Jim, we mentioned that it looks like Bruce is finally trying to get to pre-COVID budget line items, where he lost quite a bit during COVID. That was a good point, Jim.
Well, we lost or didn't need it because they
Right.
didn't have the
Right.
same demands on
Right,
it.
right.
And I appreciated the fact that he was trying to forecast for inflation, because that's one of my big concerns is that the budget is passed and these utilities, when you see they're going up 30% or whatever, and
Yes.
uncontrollable costs.
Prices for
that
his
will-
vehicles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we'll come back to the well. So perhaps it's better to have a well full and
exactly.
not have to come back. I did wonder, did we have a lot of, I know we haven't had turnbacks from 22 yet, but I was just wondering if he's got a lot of extra capacity in any place this year.
Bruce
Yeah.
himself in his department. Well, Steve's a better source for that.
Pull it out of your head here. Just, is it running? How is the current year's budget running?
We're going along fairly well. It's getting tight because the.
We're to the end of the ride.
What Bruce has kind of submitted on a routine basis. There'll be an agenda on the next council meeting about some transfers to cover for the utilities. But we're able to, the department heads are doing a really, really good job at staying within their means. So we should be okay. But I can't give it like it's gonna be X dollars yet, but we're starting to watch it now as we get close to year end. And we'll try to update the council as we go along.
He did give that vivid example of Kathy's schools. He said he budgeted 33,000 for utilities and it ran out in December. Right, so he gave a good vivid example of what he's dealing with.
Yeah. Utilities are projected up 23.4%. The one,
Kathy, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
I
you.
didn't mean to interrupt you,
Go ahead.
Chris. I would echo what everyone has said. If you look at what Rich pointed out, that Bruce's budget is 9+ million and 7.3 are expenses that are outside of his, or everyone's control. You're looking at 1.7 or 8 million that really is inside his control. And with the exception of the bargain for raises in his bargaining units, he level funded everything.
Pretty
Yes.
much, yeah.
He pretty much used last year's figures, so
So I don't
I
know
would
that,
echo Chris's.
I don't know that we have to vote on the budget, although I suppose if everybody
I
were
think
comfortable.
just if we have a consensus of general
Recommendation.
approval, I think that should suffice, and we can just put that in the minutes so that
Yeah,
it's.
so none of us see making much in the way of change.
I don't
He doesn't have anywhere to go with it.
I think our discussion on the capital projects, we kind of did that at our meeting last week, as we suspended the line-by-line description, because everybody seemed to be comfortable
And,
with that.
and can I add that because it's one of the topics we want to discuss with the town manager, with our meeting with her is after this
Yeah.
meeting. I think we should hold that in abeyance and to thoroughly discuss, because we pretty much went over all the items.
Right.
But it's a matter now of how does it fit and how does it help us forecast for next year?
All right, then that takes care of agenda item number 2, unless someone wants to add anything to that. If not, that really opens our meeting up to begin item number 3, which is with our guests here. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Maybe can I ask you to just introduce yourselves for the purposes of our meeting?
Want me to start?
Why don't you start, Heather?
I'm Heather Brown, I'm Director of Curriculum.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Bill Fonseca, Vice Chair of the School Committee.
Sarah Julios, Chair of the School Committee.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Thanks for coming.
Good to have you all.
Thank you for having us.
A point, my pen just ran out. Does anybody have an extra pen?
I usually always have an extra written.
I'm educated.
Compliments of East Long Meadow Public Schools.
Thanks for everybody.
Retired to,
Can't believe it. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
It's actually the chair.
Leave it to Rich.
So I don't know who wants to lead us on, whether it's Sarah or Gordon.
Sure, I'm gonna kick us off and then I'm
Sure,
gonna pass
please.
it over to the superintendent. But we first of all just wanted to start by saying thank you again for the opportunity to come today, to address your committee, to answer any questions or offer any points of clarification that you may have based on having received our budget proposal and our presentation, as well as the third quarter financial report. We sincerely appreciate the collaborative nature so far of the budget process. We appreciated the early meetings that we had, the opportunity to address you all today. Hope that that continues not only during our time today, but also beyond this. If there's other points of clarification that need to happen, we're always more than willing to come and answer those questions, whether it's one-on-one or as a group. As a school committee, we've been seeking to improve the quality of the educational experiences that we're offering to our students. We want to do that through the process of sound budgeting that not only is focused on this academic year or this fiscal year rather, but really a multi-year process that I know Mr. Smith is going to speak to as well, because we have the reality in front of us that we're educating in a world now that has not only changed just by nature of society, but also by nature of COVID-19 and the impacts it's having on our students. We know some of those realities based on our doors being open, but we also don't know the realities of what is to come, not only based on the pandemic, but also on the fact that we have students that are still to enter our doors. We have 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds that have also experienced COVID and its impacts, and we don't know what those 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds are going to bring when they enter the doors of East Long Meadow Public Schools. So we definitely want to craft a budget that allows for that and gives grace for the experiences that we're going to need to contend with as students continue to enter our school system. But we also want to make sure that our budgeting practices are respectful of the broader community. While we're seeking to really support our youngest citizens, our students, we also know that there's other departments, and we also know that there are other citizens of the community that have maybe different needs and priorities. But we are here today to really advocate for the work that we're charged with, and to do that in a way that's respectful of your time and your responsibility. But with that, I know Mr. Smith has a few words he wants to open, and then we're really here to offer any clarifications that we can relative to the process. Yes.
Thank you. I know that you all have the hearing slides, and you have some other sheets. All I wanted to do to sort of support what Mrs. Trulio just said is that we know that over the last few years, given that no one can predict how COVID might impact the economy, town department, school department, and so forth, families, for all of the above, that, we've been conservative and fiscally responsible. As a school department, we've reduced by 11 positions, and we know recovering from this, does the impact of shutting down in March of 2020, then coming into a year last year where we were remote for the fall, with the exception of our students with significant and complex needs, and then moving into a hybrid model, and then finally in just around this time last year, coming into a full in-person model, then thinking that in the summer, we were planning for somewhat of a more regular school year, but unfortunately, as different variants swept the United States, we got into more of a mode similar to last year. Even though we were in person, we had all our safety protocols in place. That impact, both the year last year and then how we originally planned, I guess, our mindset, and then switching gears to being in that masked and safety protocol, has had just an incredible impact, an impact that we're just really defining. We're seeing student management issues up. We're seeing, to the point that Mrs. Trulio made, we have students entering our preschool who haven't had early intervention services the way they've had years past. we're also seeing students enter our preschool with more significant needs than we've ever seen before. So they're coming in without early intervention services, coming into what we hope is a structured and supportive model, but they're not used to that. And then they're requiring just an incredible amount of staff. And I think both those pieces, along with the gaps we're seeing in terms of learning loss with our students, this is the first time as superintendent that I came into a fall where I presented to the school committee, and we were very close to the state average in terms of our achievement scores on the state assessment system, and in some grade levels below.
Sorry.
Just truly wanted to emphasize that below, get that on record. The nice thing, it's an incredible town and we have an incredible staff. So we have seen at the mid-cycle report, which we did in early March, we have seen growth. We have seen academic progress. Not to the level where we're seeing the numbers at grade level that we are used to seeing, but we're seeing them move. And so that's nice to see. And hopefully we will continue to see that as we present in June where we are academically. But I don't know if you've had a chance to look at some of these slides. A key piece as we look at sort of the federal grants, it's helped us put in place adjustment counselors at all levels. And so the numbers that I put in there in terms of what our adjustment counselors are seeing, as you leaf through that, and it's a few slides in, that's just their scheduled caseload, and that's the average.
We didn't number them. Next year we will.
4, page 4. If it was on the computer, it would say slide number, and so I'd be able to get you that, Mr. Fitzgerald, but we're going paper right now.
Old school.
Old school, exactly. So those are just averages, and that's between the adjustment counselor and the guidance counselor. I didn't want to, it's a pretty loaded slide as it is. I didn't want to overload it with everything broken out. But one of the things, we had a leadership team meeting this morning, and one of the things that one of my principals reminded me of, these are scheduled. A lot of things that our counselors do on a daily basis is reactive.
Yeah,
And so that's a harder one to give you in terms of the numbers they see in terms of reactive, whether it be a student dropping in, hopefully recognizing that they may need that support, or worse, a full-fledged crisis where we have to move and try to de-escalate, and that often then has impact not only to the student who may be in crisis, but then the class and students around. So it's an interesting year. We've dealt with those situations, but on a much, much smaller scale in previous years. So that's sort of what we're seeing.
Just
Absolutely, yeah.
question on it. I noticed that, 35 in the elementary school, 29 and Birchland, 20. Is that meaning more kids are requiring help in the elementary schools, or is it just a function of how many counselors you?
No, I think it's that right now more students at least are being scheduled, and some of that I think is due to the fact that at the elementary schools, one, we're talking about the fact that they had a year where there was less structure. I won't say no structure, but less structure. And families are more apt at the elementary level to be much more on top of and advocating, hey, I need these services. And as students continue to progress and become more independent, I think both the child and sometimes the family start to move away from that same type of advocacy. I would say at the high school, the 20 plus, we're probably in the middle 20s to close to 30.
And it's the parents who would typically ask for an appointment?
It's a combination.
Yeah.
It's a combination. The older students may do that on their own and may actually seek that out without their parents necessarily knowing immediately.
And should we assume that the River Valley appointments are a different level of counsel?
Correct. Yeah, so those 18, 22, and 19 students, and remember, these are figures that I took in March, so they could be higher now. We actually exhausted River Valley's capacity. They're looking to hire again. those students are also seeing our adjustment counselors.
In addition.
In addition, correct. So it's.
But that level is a much more intense
Correct.
level of
Correct.
therapy for a.
These are
complex kid.
licensed therapists that are providing a much more intense level, just as you said.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off.
No, not at all.
Can I
Go ahead,
continue,
Rich, yeah.
Fred? Mr. Superintendent, the hidden agenda behind this, tell us about our out-of-district placements. Is this preventing this, the out-of-district placements?
It's somewhat tied. It's, you have some students, yes, that if we can't, even with River Valleys, provide the support on a daily basis that allows that student to access the curriculum in our classrooms, then yes, then we may have to go to an outside placement. I don't know if this is wood. We've
Laminate.
Close enough, we're gonna
done a pretty good job this year to not have an incredible increase in out-of-district placements. And some of that's because of, or a lot of that's because if you ask the elementary principals, our adjustment counselors that we've added.
Exactly that early in.
Have been a game changer, is what we're
Is
hearing
what
from
they
the
said.
principals.
May I ask a question on
Sure.
that? The River Valley, because it is more intense therapy with licensed therapists, is any of that paid for through the family's insurance?
It's all paid for through the family's insurance.
It's all
All
paid
paid for, yeah. That's why we ended up partnering with River Valley, is because kudos to them, they found a way to make this easy for school systems, because in years past, you might have a meeting where you're looking to support a student with this type of counseling, and you make the recommendation, and then the parents and the family is there saying, okay, where do I go?
Yeah.
And everybody's booked, and there's a wait list and so forth. This was fantastic, and this was something that we,
Prior to the pandemic.
Or even trying to get the child to the appointment.
prior to the pandemic, we were partnering with them. We just upped our game a little bit
Yeah.
during the pandemic.
Do the students go to River Valley, or does River Valley staff come?
The staff comes, so they're staffing based.
That's a good
on-
partnership.
The tough part is sometimes our need grows rapidly, and so they're unable to keep up with the staffing, and that's where we are right now. So we have referrals waiting to go. Those are numbers that are being seen or were being seen.
But I think to that point around out-of-district placements, being able to keep students within the climate of the community, the school community, and not having them miss academic hours to either get picked up, to be transported by their families to an appointment and then possibly not return, also helps to keep kids feeling a part of a larger school community, helping to keep them in terms of their academics somewhat on pace and not missing huge amounts of instructional time
Right.
because they have a need that needs to be addressed. So this also helps us in terms of being proactive rather than reactive after the fact.
And along those same lines, this is very much a coordinated group. So your guidance counselors and your adjustment counselors are working with classroom teachers as well. Our counselors at the elementary level are delivering a social and emotional curriculum in the classrooms. So they each take a grade level. So they're getting to know all the students, as well as the students are seeing separately, either in small groups or individually, and they're working in coordination with our classroom teachers. So that's been hugely helpful.
Especially for the little ones who, when we looked at the survey data in the beginning from the teachers, kids who had been home for 2 years were having trouble sharing and, interacting appropriately. So that's really what the focus has been on, is those social skills.
And I think that's important to know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is the goal of these programs, is it the goal to mainstream these children that have?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
The goal of all of this is, it's really being highlighted now because of all the new research. But the old research of just Maslow is, there's a certain hierarchy of needs before someone can be present, focus, and learn. And that's, the safety and the security and being fed, all of those human elements. This is where we're helping students feel safe, secure, and comfortable, and then they're ready to learn.
Okay.
So we're teaching the skills and providing the support so that they can start to do that themselves.
more and more of what we're doing is getting kids all the things they need to be able to learn.
Right.
In addition to teaching,
Yeah.
so.
So I know I'm asking you for a crystal ball.
Sure.
Since you've seen improvement, do you think in the next year you will be able to swing more towards normalcy? And it sounds like the emphasis may eventually swing to the younger set, that elementary school, who really, as you say, you know, they don't know, and they've had a lot of probably chaos. I can't imagine being at home with a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old on Zoom, trying to manage your own career, and, you know,
Right?
total chaos. And whereas the older, I also imagine, have a better skill set, perhaps. Obviously, there are outliers,
They
but.
became a little bit more relaxed in their skill set.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's another hurdle that
Another
you've
hurdle.
got to get up.
Right.
Talk about
Yeah.
structure, the
Yeah.
structure. you know.
There was a mental health crisis in the nation before the pandemic, and it just exacerbated it also.
But I think to your point, we don't know what's gonna
Right.
happen with our youngest kids, like self-regulation, isolation, you know, even just typical preschool experiences, not being able to talk to another 3-year-old without a computer screen potentially in front of you, or if at all. And then also whoever your caregiver is possibly being distracted during that time by, you know,
Their own
trying to attend
child,
to their own work and being able to kind of balance that. But I think also what we might see from our upper elementary and our middle and our high school students is as they start to come back into the routines and the structures, we might also start to see some different types of spikes in behavior and spikes in different,
We're actually already seeing that. Yeah.
because now the pressure of now catching up,
Yeah.
so to speak, with academics, I think is also gonna take a toll on kids. You know, as they start to maybe get used to the routines and the experiences of, you know, transitioning between classes and having assignments that are due and interacting with individuals in a face-to-face capacity, as those start to become more habitual like they were pre-COVID-19, the work of actually gaining the academic gaps that have been created, I think was gonna put a different level of stress on kids, especially as we start to see things like our high stakes testing come back and start to count towards things like graduation, where those had been kind of in a moratorium, so to speak, previous. So now as that starts to come back, there's a different reality that they're gonna be faced with. So as we continue to feel the impacts, I don't think that it's going to necessarily get better quickly. I just think what we deal with is going to shift. I mean, that's my best crystal ball,
Sure,
but
yeah.
And, you know, working with the younger children, things that we took for granted, like, you know, kids knowing how to hold a pencil correctly, you know, like, because they've been typing for so long. So they're just, it's really kind of shifted the things that, the pre-skills that we have to teach before we can actually get to the curriculum. So some of those kids, we're always going to be trying to, like Sarah said, get them.
It's a constant catch-up.
I was gonna.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead if you want.
No, I was gonna ask about staff, if that's okay.
Sure.
My
If I may, if I just want to touch on this, just to give you an idea, because I'm not sure, the school committee gets to see this a little bit more often. But our demographics in town are changing. And so even as you think about the challenges of the pandemic, we're also seeing other significant changes that just, you know, become something that we have to think about as we plan for future instruction and support. It just gives you a breakdown.
Could you, what is the definition of low income student?
So it actually gets defined by DESE, and
The new term is economically disadvantaged,
Yeah.
just so that you know.
although I took this off their website.
You did.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't-
Well, I had economically disadvantaged there too.
Right. Another one.
So just one.
Yeah, which one do you need?
This-
I didn't get that one.
Here it comes. To the next one. I'll give one back to
So
Darlene.
that's directly from.
Oh, this one, I need my glasses.
So these are students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. I don't know, Pam, if there's a better way to define that. in terms of economically disadvantaged. Generally, it's
It goes
been,
by
it goes by income level.
By income, and they look at,
Sure.
I'm 9 years out now, so I might.
Kathy, you know though, things haven't changed much.
There's a matrix.
Yeah.
And it's probably analogous to if you see ads in the paper for if you're struggling with fuel, buying fuel for your home.
Yeah.
For one person household, if you don't make over this amount, you're eligible. It's the same mindset. And it's probably the same formula.
It's very
the same
simple.
formula, but what they're doing is they're getting better at
Simplifying.
qualifying them
Right.
without people actually applying for
Having to submit a free
based
and lunch.
on, based on insurance that they're taking,
An attachment from
income
the
level and so forth.
taxes.
Exactly. So Desi, if
So
you
that
don't mind
kids
me
get
just
the food.
chiming in the security portal, so it's very confidential. Our school lunch director goes in, could be monthly, quarterly, depending on the time of year, and it's called direct certification. And as Mr. Smith said, all of these things that happen behind the scenes that folks need assistance with, it now is funnels through, and it comes through, she downloads, and we make sure that our students are coded appropriately so that we don't send out any lunch that now all of a sudden they're free or reduced. Does that
I would
make
just be
sense?
curious how that's defined.
I mean, I can grab, there's still a chart that says,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It goes by, like, if you have one child, if you have two,
Yeah,
it's
the
very
matrix,
similar,
yeah.
it's
It
like
goes
a
up to
tax.
8 or 9 and.
Yes.
Income medians.
It's all
and all of them.
income,
Yeah.
That
yes.
sounds even more complicated than affordable housing
It is.
calculation.
It can turn out to be that way.
but I think their ability now to direct certify is where we're getting better numbers now for the first time in a while. But it also, as you can see, over the last 4 years, it's a significant increase.
I'll get you that chart though, to write it down,
You
okay?
had a question?
Yeah, I want to just move a little bit.
Yeah, sorry,
Kathy.
sorry.
If I'm correct, we're asking for 3.9% increase, which is about 1.25 million, correct?
Yes,
Now, you've mentioned that 11 positions were eliminated in the past 2 years. So when I look at this year's list, are these, and I'll read them, are they restorations, are you restoring them, or are they new? The preschool teacher,
So they're-
can I just go through the list?
absolutely, I'm
Preschool
sorry.
teacher, Meadowbrook, is that a restoration or no?
Preschool teacher is additional. What we're finding, and through a grant that Dr. Welsh put in and was able to receive, we did an evaluation of our preschool program. By law, we have to offer a preschool program that students coming off of early intervention as they turn 3 have a structured, supportive program. We have that. We're not, in our estimation, and then after this evaluation, really in the model we currently use, meeting the needs of our families. And often what happens, because students turn 3 throughout the year, we get out of the ratios where you're looking, say, if a class of 15, you want to have roughly 7 students who might be on an IEP, 8 students who might be peer role models.
It's maximum, right?
Yeah, that maximum. We hope to actually be under 15 as we start the year, but knowing that we want to keep those ratios.
But this is pre-K under?
Yes.
Correct.
under IEP?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Half of them?
Right,
It's like 3 to 5 years old.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's 2.9, isn't it?
2.9.
Yeah.
2.9 is actually just 2.9, yes.
That's the one.
Yes.
Then we can start offering services, right?
So all these positions are new except for the assistant principal at East Lamar High School?
Yes, yes.
So you have two, could you
All these
say-
positions are.
Just can we go one by one so I can put it?
Yeah.
So
So if I may answer that question, when I said we're down positions, we're looking to recover positions that will meet the needs that we currently have.
So it's not a
So-
new FTE. I just wanted to.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I just think that's important.
It's so what we're looking to do is, we know, okay, we had positions lost, but our needs are also changing over the last 2 years. And so these are positions we feel that will best meet the needs for our current challenges and our current students. And if you then go down the list to the adjustment counselors, I think they're already here because they're on the.
that's a transition, I can.
Correct.
They're
They're already meeting the needs. Correct.
And the math interventionist coach, there was a literacy coach that was removed, that position was removed. And, they need coaching, but they need math support more.
So
So-
originally there was a literacy
Yeah.
coach
Mhm.
for Maple Shade Mountain View.
Shared.
Shared.
Mhm.
And
Based on
the,
the
the
needs we
need is more for math than
Correct.
language arts.
And if we can, have
So
one
what
at
did
each
you do
school.
with the literacy person?
So literacy was one of the positions that
Eliminated?
was
Yeah.
eliminated.
Okay.
And
So
it was
I-
shared.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
you're bringing it back under,
Yes.
for a different focus.
Yes,
Got it. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to just follow up with Kathy's. I'd like to go one by one.
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like they may be new positions, but they may not be not new for the budget.
Correct.
So maybe we could just go through.
Sure.
So the preschool, the additional preschool, would that be in addition to
That's
the
new.
budget?
So,
That's a new, so
This is a new position.
you're right. It's a new position. It's a position that is going to move our preschool model forward and better meet the needs of students who are coming into our.
It'll be an increase from 22 to 23 in order to.
Right.
yes.
No,
I mean, technically, all of these are increases from last year's budget to this year's budget. If you go back 3 fiscal years, these 11 FTEs, in this case, we're looking at 5 or 7, were in there as FTEs. They may not have been titled this.
I see.
So they are all,
So our thought process is, we know we're not going to recover in one fiscal year.
Yeah.
We want to try to do it over a few fiscal years. And so what are our most immediate needs right now? So preschool, going back to one at a time, I didn't lose that question. Preschool is an immediate need. That's something that we really need to evolve into a new model so that we can take care of the students who are coming in. And they're coming in September through June. As soon as they go, they turn 2.9.
Yeah.
Is this a brand new program for September of this year?
We're going to have this, a 5-day-a-week. Right now, we've committed to a 5-day-a-week program. It's been a 4-day-a-week with Wednesdays being off. We will right now commit to half days, but we are investigating a full-day portion of it. Because we do have students, some students are going to be 4 years old in that program, and maybe they can handle a full day. And then there are other students, based on their needs, that they may need a longer time for different services that they're receiving,
Based on their IEPs.
based on their IEPs.
I'm sorry.
So it's not really a new program, it's a redesigned
Correct.
program.
That's what my
With-
question was going to be.
Right.
So there are already FTEs in place.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
functioning in this program.
That's correct.
Absolutely. Yep. This would be adding FTEs that we feel we need to create a better program.
Required by the law.
Right.
Yes.
How far we've come.
Yeah.
I remember when we were talking about
Full day.
It was optional.
Yeah.
And then we were going to do it by tuition.
Yes.
There's the funny thing, the kindergarten's still optional. Yet this preschool is not.
Yeah.
Well, because it's tied
Because you're
with the
trying to-
IEP.
Right, I mean, I think everybody is thankful for the full day and they go to kindergarten.
And this is funded obviously then by taxation, by town, but
Mhm.
generally. And
And there's also
another
another childhood
unfunded
grant that we put in for each year. So there's partial funding through a grant.
And I was just going to add, I just think it's important to say the peer students, there is a fee attached for that, which currently is $1,800 a year. Sometimes what happens though,
For the
that's for the whole year, that's correct.
Yeah.
And we usually do that through monthly payments through central office and then.
But the parent bears that fee.
That's
Yes.
correct, and that usually will offset a teacher's salary to help with that. But I just would like to just add what sometimes happens,
Teacher salary completely?
no,
So
no,
it's a partial.
it's just a partial, yeah. Sorry, I lost my track, I'm sorry.
It
No,
sometimes
that's
happens.
okay. Oh, what sometimes, yes, it is. What sometimes happen, or often happens is you get, so we talked about that ratio, that important ratio, but some of those peer students during that time, during the year, they're being evaluated as well. per a parent's request or per the teacher seeing some things, they might then be deemed needing an IEP. So now they switch over. So now, do you see what can happen? And then in the meanwhile, we also have brand-new 3-year-olds who just turned 3, whether that's November, December, January, who have to come into our, so do you see how it gets a little bit tricky, right? So we really do need a better pre-K program, and we're really excited about moving forward with this.
A lot
It's
of
a
planning.
terrific partnership in order to get the evaluation of our current model done, to be able to really help us to see the forest from the tree, so to speak, to be able to say, what is the best method forward, so we can make smart decisions around who to hire and where they need to be hired.
Yeah, the literacy went to math, yeah.
Do you want me to move on to the next one, or? Okay. So the elementary math coach slash
We're all
intro.
set with that, because we explained the literacy to math, correct?
So everybody's good with that?
Got that.
All right.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
That's
It had been a literacy coach,
That was-
so we're asking
So,
for
It's more important. It was an existing
all right,
position
okay.
that changed.
And,
I'm just-
well, it was
I'm just,
cut.
uh,
It was cut
modified.
last
It
year.
was
the
cut.
this
It was
year,
cut.
but it's being returned with a different curriculum focus.
The needs have shifted.
as did a reading interventionist at Birchland Park. So if you want to talk more about the intervention coordinator.
Okay, yep, thank you. So we have,
When did she retire?
Sorry.
we've introduced a number of different interventions, academic interventions is what these are. And so these happen sometimes in small groups. They can also happen individually. And given that, what Birchland Park is looking to do is have a position that coordinates all of the interventions that are going on in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, work with the classroom teachers in the specific subject areas, most likely in ELA and math, but in other subject areas if needed, coordinate. We don't want to keep a child on an intervention necessarily from day 1 through day 180. So if the child's making progress, we want that child to return back to direct instruction. In an intervention, they're receiving direct instruction in the classroom and then the intervention. But hopefully the skill sets can be applied, and in coordination with the teacher, you can be supported back in the classroom, possibly without the intervention after a certain period of time, if that makes sense.
I still struggle with the word intervention.
I was wondering, what
It's more
exactly
like
is
if
that?
a child is not reading at grade level, so they get their ELA class, and then they'll work with someone to help them improve
So it's
their
more
reading
like
skills.
tutoring.
Yeah.
or
Kind of.
Unless it's emotional as well. or-
No, this is a little bit of both.
Tutoring is often helping a child with work that they're doing.
That they're capable
This
of,
is actually
Filling gaps.
filling gaps and having a specific skill set to be able to teach
Are they
a
being
child
called
how to
out?
read. For example, when an 8th grade teacher is teaching a child how to use what they read to learn and do other things.
So is this more of a global position that does English,
Correct.
various things?
Right.
And there's a need because the gap has grown greater because of all that has
And the
happened?
quantities.
Right, the amount of students that are now in intervention is far greater than we've seen in previous years. In addition, and someone asked it, I apologize, and I'm not sure who, may have been you, Jim. This coordinator would also work with our social emotional program, because often, yes, there is a combination that, students may need social emotional support, but then they also need the academic support, and would teach within that program at least one period a day.
So that was my question, even before today. The way it's worded here, it made me think that this individual would be more administrative, like
It's
pulling in, I
Actually,
mean,
the Unit A position?
right.
Yeah.
Pulling in all the data from all of the, the coaches, the counselors.
Right.
But it's as much classroom-based.
Right.
Yeah.
One-to-one or small group would, got it. And Unit A, okay.
Correct. Yeah. We work with Unit A to.
So it is
Fine.
2:14,
Oh,
so just trying to
Pick up
make
the
sure
speed.
that we don't,
Okay.
if we get
Assistant
in
principals.
any vital questions
Sure.
or things.
So
Are these in kind of a priority order?
these are not, this is simply going from youngest to oldest,
Mhm.
with the exception of the art teacher, which is more of a district request, looking at finalizing a pattern that we've been working on over the years. Where if we have shared, it seems Maple Shade and Mountain View always are sharing their staff, their special staff, so to speak, in this case, art teacher, music teachers in the past. And so this would complete that process, as well as allow us to do some scheduling at the building level, where as students go to specials, you're going to have grade level classroom teachers have time where they're collaborating and planning together and reviewing student achievement data, that they've seen throughout the year on a more regular basis. And then that allows them to change up instructional plans to hopefully continue to help students build and grow and fill in the gaps, the learning loss that we've seen.
And it allows for also an intervention block so that students aren't missing in ELA class to get help in reading, because they need both. And so the way the model's working now, unfortunately, kids sometimes miss that core instruction to fill in gaps, and so they're never quite getting where they need to be because they're missing that class instruction.
Well,
Thank you.
it's a lot more complicated than it used to be.
Yes.
Yes.
I may be shifting focus. I'll take a step back. I was gonna ask a budget question.
Well, we're going for the budget, so go ahead.
That's what I think. What are you anticipating in chapter 78? Because I have a figure here of 854,666. Is that what you're anticipating?
So, yeah, we're anticipating what really came through with the governor's budget.
Mhm.
I know House Ways and Means just came through, and it's like it's added to that. However, as we break it out, it doesn't look like East Long Meadow is qualifying for that additional funding, which I think is,
The $30?
it's the additional 30 per student, which I think calculates out.
We don't. I actually reached out to Desi, Rob
We
O'Donnell.
were excited, and then all of a sudden, we were not as excited.
He says that, let me see, I actually reached out to Rob O'Donnell.
No, what are you talking about now with $30?
So you asked me about the increase in chapter 70.
Right,
So the 854,000
Right,
change originally was proposed in the governor's budget.
got it.
And then recently, the House Ways and Means gave their draft of the budget, and it looked, at least on the preliminary memo, as though globally, they were going to increase that gain of chapter 70 from $30 per pupil to $60 per pupil, which would have increased our 854, about 76,000 or so.
Yeah.
So we were excited.
But now it's,
Right.
And
it'd be closer to the 854.
I think it's going to stay at the 854. When we reached out to Desi and said, who actually qualifies? Is this global? And go ahead, Pam.
So Rob O'Donnell replied by telling me, what did Rob say? I apologize. Yeah, he said.
Luckily, that's what he said.
There it is. He said, your district doesn't qualify for it. And I said, well, why not? I just want to understand. And he said, that's because you're a foundation aid district. You're not eligible for minimum aid. And I said, what districts do get that? He said, districts that are not eligible for foundation aid, which guarantees that they receive $60 per pupil in additional funding over their FY22 aid. You're projected to receive an increase of $337 per pupil, which if you equate that out, that's where the 854 comes. So we're not going to get any over that.
It's just
that
even if
854.
the conference committee comes out with something, I know.
Oh, it's possible,
It's
but I
possible, but
don't.
right now, this is what we're talking,
Yeah,
this is
and
what
so-
we're dealing with.
and that $30 increase is not, I don't believe it's going
Don't
to,
qualify.
correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I know the MMA is pushing for $100 per pupil.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I knew that was out.
High in the-
yes,
high
yes.
with the legislature. you know.
It's really interesting, the way they do that, in terms of how your chapter 70, because as you know, last year, we only increased by the $30 per pupil. And this year, when they reestablished definitions for the low income, in terms of how low income is put into your foundation budgeting formula, and you look at our 27.6%, that was put in, I think, from, it originally was 135% of poverty level, below poverty
Yeah,
level.
that's
And now they've changed it to 185%. And so that's where you're seeing a significant increase in our Chapter 70, because our low-income students, or economically disadvantaged students, have increased quite a bit. We've had a slight tick up in our special education students, which also play a pretty significant role in Chapter 70. So I think we were somewhere around 18 or 17%. We're now higher, 19, approaching 20, 19.5%.
I have a question,
Go right ahead.
and it probably Pam, not that I want to.
No, that's fine.
In this current year, you've had about $5 million in grants. Do you feel reasonably comfortable that that will reoccur?
No, in the $5 million, you're looking at the whole picture,
Yeah.
right? That was that,
Listed here.
yeah, so every,
List of all the sources.
yeah, in the presentation, we always list the current year's
Right.
whole picture, because we think it's important that everybody sees, and we acknowledge all of those grant funding. In there, I did include $2.2 million of the ESSER 3 funds, because we officially received that grant. But we have not, it's a one-time, and it goes through September of 2024. So that's why you might have heard me say, like, we need to be strategic about this. How do we use these funds wisely so we don't have a cliff in 2 years that we're going to fall off of, and maybe get some of these positions into the operating budget now. So anyways, to answer your question, Chris, that $5 million, no, we don't receive that every year. It probably is more about $2.5 million to $3 million. But yes, those are pretty much every year. We have our Title I, our Title IIA, if you need a detail on those grants, I can get you them. But
It's funny, though, the Department of Ed, despite the pandemic, continues to raise the bar. And I mean, for good reason, but sometimes you wonder, I mean, we're in the pandemic, now they're increasing the score kids need to have on the ELA MCAS. So they're pushing for us to upgrade our curriculum and do a lot of different things. And when we look at the curriculum costs,
cha-ching, very expensive.
to get a K-5 curriculum in literacy, I got a quote here for $786,000. And, they're seeing what curriculum we're using. Is it research-based? Does it help kids? And these are all very great things, but it's also,
And actually,
how do we manage all of this when, we have
guidance
limited
and
funds?
Ms. Brown is actually directing all this. The guidance that DESE has provided for use of ESSER funds, specifically ESSER 3, because you can carry it over, is to build that foundation, to buy the high-quality, research-based curriculum materials within the next 2 school years, so that as you come out of this, you have this foundation and you don't have to then use operational monies to expend
Assuming they
toward.
don't change it again on you.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So we have 2 K-8 actually curriculum initiatives going on around literacy and around math. And can't say enough about Ms. Brown's work, but also just our teachers who are volunteering to review many of these different curriculum materials. And hopefully by June, we'll be looking at selecting one and purchasing one, 2 actually, math and ELA.
Keep
So-
moving boxes from the school committee
So I
room.
just want to clarify one thing about the ESSER funds. It sounds like what you're trying to do is, it sounds like there is ESSER funds available for the coming fiscal year.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, there is.
And you, in terms of trying to decide what positions to try to bring into the operating budget versus if you had to, it sounds like those funds could be used for
Yes.
the adjustment counselors. So you're trying to balance
That's exactly what.
bringing in to the operating budget without a big
Slowly.
jump.
Yes.
And
The positions.
having some of that money to do.
Curriculum, PPE. And so just to be clear on that, because it gets a little, and I apologize, I caused a lot of confusion even at the school committee meeting. I don't know if you watched, but when I put that on there, Gordon, I'm sorry, I felt really badly, because on that whole picture, I put what our plan was at the time of the application. With all grants, you have to submit an application, and you have to come up with your best guesstimate of what you're gonna do. So it is, I put $1 million, it wasn't just me, it was a collective, discussions here. But it is heavy here on the salary, but that is not what it's going to be. We're gonna end up doing a large amendment because that's gonna shift to curriculum and supplies rather than hopefully, because we don't wanna put a ton of positions on, on the grant unnecessarily and then have that funding cliff. So does that make sense to you?
ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, there was a lot of operational pieces in them. There was the personal protective equipment that we needed to buy. There was additional lunch and recess monitors at the elementary level because now we're all eating in separate rooms. There were additional custodians, part-time custodians that we needed to bring in. Now, as we shift in ESSER 2, late ESSER 2 into ESSER 3, now we're looking to build that academic foundation, hopefully, so that we can continue this work and have the personnel over the next couple fiscal years who will be able to really make that happen as we get the high quality instructional materials. Because one of the things that you have to do, obviously, as you bring in new instructional materials, is you have to do a lot of professional development. And that's where if you have academic coaches who are with you on a daily basis, you can do that a lot more easily and effectively because you're not doing, we have a professional, we do have professional development days that stand alone. But, when you do that on November 11th and, not on the 11th because that's Veterans Day, but it's Election Day, November 4th, we'll say. That's a one-time day. Hopefully people are taking something away from that, but it's not the same as having someone who's supporting the work on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so that's where the coaching piece comes in.
So it's 226. Rich, you looked like you had a
I
question.
think I'm okay.
Okay.
I had one question, and it's for Pam.
All right, I'll
It's
check
in
that.
the second paragraph
Yeah.
of your overview,
Okay,
where you talk about, it's the last sentence. This is due to leave of absences or vacancy positions that have remained unfilled. I get the leave of absence
Yep.
part, but do we have vacancies that
that's correct.
aren't going to be filled?
And do we need them to be?
Right.
I'm just saying that you're seeing balances on the salary accounts.
Right.
Because we've had to get really creative internally, causing tons of challenges at the schools because we're so thin. And also then, or flipped over to have to try to find contracted services to provide these because we can't actually find bodies. And that could, we need bus drivers, I know the bus drivers are LPBs, but we need paras, we need teachers, food service.
That's kind of consistent with.
We need custodians.
Bruce Finney, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, I wasn't.
Yeah,
That's-
thank you.
That's good.
I had the dumb question about.
No question.
There's no dumb question.
So in our package, our original budget
Yeah.
package,
Mhm.
the amount that was shown as the budget request was 3,391. I don't know if I was just looking,
It's right there.
differently.
The whole
It's the
picture.
last page.
Oh, okay, so I was looking at the ELTS whole
Yeah,
picture.
that's 22, right?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
this year,
this is
right?
the 22? So.
What are we talking about? The budget? Oh,
Yeah.
The whole picture.
the whole picture, that is FY
So you're doing
22.
Like this for your assumption for 23.
Not formally like that, to put it
So
into,
basically, the presentation of 23 budget is just.
just showing you that, yes, that's correct.
So the 33,319 is the FY '22.
No, that's FY.
All right, I guess I didn't realize that. I just kind of assumed.
All right,
you would
okay.
break it out there.
Well, if you look, though, the majority of our budget is
So,
people.
There's about
Yes, 84% of the budget is salaries.
3.4 and 3.9 is the contractual, personnel, 3.5, right?
I have another foolish question. I'm going to follow Jim.
Sure.
How is the school choice program working out for East Long Meadow, and how many students do you anticipate having in fiscal '23?
So we've participated in the school choice program this is the second year, next year will be the third year. So what do we have?
15 students was our year one in FY '21, 10 students.
last year.
Last year.
But we didn't
And
fill all those slots were.
we only filled 9,
Only now.
yeah. And
Then
then
7, is that
it's actually, it's higher than 7
for next
for
year?
next year.
10, isn't it?
I thought we said it was on 10
We said 10.
for next year.
10.
Yeah, we said
And,
10 for next year.
And it's working out well. The reason I think that it's working out well is that we do it in a very structured way. We look at where specifically we might have lower enrollment at a specific grade level. So next year, one of those grade levels will be our 3rd grade moving into 4th. And so we've opened up slots in 4th grade. We also, I believe, in the 6th grade level is where we've also opened up slots. And each year, as the school committee reviews it and discusses it, they look at where enrollment is across all grade levels. And as you heard, we've actually reduced. We went 15 the first year, 10, and I believe we're again at 10.
But the request this year was actually for more. But as a
Right.
school committee, we
It was
took a look at
25.
it. And we actually said, that's not
If
necessary.
you haven't filled those slots yet, that's just starting now, isn't it?
No, we've advertised, and we have not been able to fill all the slots yet, but we're getting close, at least in accordance with our advertisement, to the lottery poll. So we may delay that, hopefully, to fill all the slots, but
So you have 10 slots available for the new
Next
school.
academic
Correct.
year.
And when you fill the slot, how long is that child go through the system in that slot as long as they want? So once
Correct.
you're in,
You're
so you're not,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they
So-
pull
Unless they
out.
opt out.
Next year decided that they no longer wanted to participate. Our students who are already in would be grandfathered and they would go through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the way that works is $5,000 per student comes, and it's right on the cherry sheet, from district to district, because that is school choice. And then there is a component that if there is special ed services, and special ed directors are the ones that do all of this, because it depends, OT, PT, all different things. There is another dollar value associated with that. It varies depending on top of the 5,000.
7,000
It's,
total?
I don't think it's a flat, I don't think it's a
Oh,
flat
it's
amount.
based on the complexity
Correct,
of the
yes.
student.
Yes, and there's,
So it's 2:31. I know I have one last
Sure.
question about enrollment. I thought what I'd do then is ask the committee members if they had any other questions right now and then.
Sure.
At the risk of being over a little bit, give you a chance to ask us any questions you would want to ask. So mine was enrollment. Are you projecting increases or decreases?
I think, so we had a 7.2% decrease last year. A lot of that was due to the fact that we were all figuring out how to work within the pandemic. And we started out remotely.
And it looked like you weren't alone. You had one of the higher decreases, but it looked.
Correct, we weren't alone. All districts in the LPVC had a decrease. We have bounced back a decent amount, even between our October 1 collection of student information, which the state uses for Chapter 70. We've increased. We're now at, I think I passed it out, but 2492. And I think we're going to bounce back again because we still have not the amount we had last year. We're homeschooling, but we still have more than we usually have. And I think we're going to see those students start to return, especially if we can return to what might be considered a more regular opening in school year.
And it's fair to say that that decrease is not attributable to they up and moved away from town, more the reticence of the parents to feel comfortable or the situation of the student.
Right.
To returning to
Absolutely.
a face-to-face environment.
And we did have some students who were not going to return. Parents let us know, and that's why they're homeschooling.
Really?
Yeah.
Final question. We kind of have been outlining we don't have that much time.
Sure.
We've been meeting weekly. Whether we'll have time to kind of talk about, our sense of the budget this afternoon after we meet with the town manager. If not, we'll be talking about it as part of the first part of our agenda for next week. The only thing I can think of is if we do have some major questions, we'd like to have the chance to maybe invite you back to talk a little bit.
We would love to be back.
But then, that's kind of the picture at the moment. We may have some room next week or the following week. So I'll shut up and give you a chance to ask.
I don't have any particular questions. I just think, again, school finance is complex. So is the running of schools. I think you said it multiple times today, it's changed quite a bit. So we are more than willing to come back and try to clarify anything that needs clarification rather than leaving anyone feeling as if, this is not a complete picture. That's by no means our goal. Our goal is to really help make this as clear as possible we don't have the information. Pam and the entire team has been terrific about really trying to mine it because these funding sources are also new and they've come with a tremendous amount of not strings attached, but work attached. They're earmarked for certain pieces, and if there's any information we provide to clarify around why we're spending the funds we're spending or anticipating spending them in the ways that we're planning to, then we're happy to do that. But we want to just make sure that this process is clear and open for everybody so that not only can the school department move forward, but the other departments can move forward and know that, it's attributable to trying to make gains for our students and trying to make a work environment that's.
And we do recognize that we're one department out of many. And as Sarah said, we're just trying to move forward. I mean, this has been a devastating time frame for everybody. And we still don't know. There's still going to be things 4 or 5 years down the road that we don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
We're trying to be proactive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah.
As best we can.
Right, well, inflation is affecting every
Yes, it
segment
is.
of our lives and our departments and so forth. And we really appreciate your coming in and being.
Sure.
quick
Thank you
with
for having us.
us.
Thank you for allowing us to go a few minutes over.
Can I just add one more thing before, because people usually get curious about retirees. So I just wanted to mention that we do have 13 retirees in the school department. There is 1 administrator, 8 teachers, 1 nurse, 2 clerical, 2 paras, for a total of 13. During the budget process, I just want to be very clear that all of that
Dampen your increase
is,
overall.
exactly, I take all of those into consideration, and every teacher, which are the big ticket items, we then put a placeholder in my spreadsheets, which we start our process. I just want back in, November, December, I'm starting to work on all these spreadsheets, moving one bargaining unit up to the next, and starting my my budget book, my baby here. And I just wanted you to know that placeholder for a teacher, we always put in, I think it's a master's 8, like 68,507. So that's coded green, and I have 8. So I just wanted you to know that is all taken into consideration for these numbers. Okay, thank you.
I have to admit that I listened to one of the school committee meetings, and way back at the beginning of the budget process, you said for every 0.5% that you increase the budget, it's going to be 160,000. So today I did the math. Golly, she was pretty darn close.
I appreciate that.
We never got to discuss the school committee request for a stipend, so.
Yes,
another
that
time.
is true. And, it's one of those things where you'll hear us discussing it, we're talking about it. I mean,
Not a big deal.
it's gonna be something that's consistent with
Yeah.
everything else.
Listen, as Sarah said, the priorities with the students.
Yeah.
67.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know.
I know.
Grandbabies that I think of as the strollers or what.
My oldest will be 9. I look at going to 4, but those are
Feels good.
I think the shot is 11.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
it happens in.
I know, it's not a good day, but it's just crazy, right? So, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Take care, everybody.
You know Dan Triggs?
Yes, he's my brother.
Every time I go in.
Marilyn thought this was a 2-carat diamond. Nice try. Good to see you, Pam.
Thank you.
Bye, Gordon.
Brownstown has COVID, we're doing Zoom tonight.
Oh, okay, thank you.
There was an email, Brownstone has COVID, we're doing Zoom tonight.
So
Oh, I guess
I
I'll
will
be
let
on
Chris,
time then.
I will let Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw the call come through, but I,
Sure.
Oh, no, not at all.
thank you, Marilyn. Okay.
I'm getting closer to the mic and to the
You are,
dial.
yes.
I've been asked by our moderator to sit closer to the mic.
All the better to hear you with.
I assume that we want to talk with Harry, and then if we have time afterwards, we can talk about what we. Welcome.
Yes.
Steve, Marilyn,
Steve-
if you want to, you
Steve,
certainly
yeah.
can.
Come on.
Gee, thanks.
And obviously, Mary, there was you were responsible for a number of budgets. And I just have a chance to make sure we're clear on them.
Sure.
And Chris was kind enough to put together kind of a list for you. And maybe let Chris kind of walk through it with you.
Was very helpful, thank you.
Good, glad it's good. Yeah, one of the things that Jim brought up at our last meeting, because generally we have in the budget, there's usually $1 million to $1.5 million for capital projects. You brought up the concern that if we don't have that this year, and we're grateful for the ARPA money, certainly, and the fact that so many of the projects can be funded without hitting the tax rate this year. That, to us, that's a real bonus. However, with your expertise on planning the budget and looking at things, and it was referred to at an earlier meeting by another group this week that we'd be going off a cliff if we didn't have spend money for the capital projects this year. Yet, I feel as though if we did fund anything for capital projects this year, we would probably not be able to fund the positions that are needed in general government or public safety or DPW. So do you foresee that we'd be in trouble next year if
And I think by trouble,
not
meaning
trouble,
like
but financial,
needing an increase
yeah.
Like
higher
the
than
double up
typical.
kind of
Yes.
thing.
Well, I don't want to call it trouble either.
No.
But I did take an opportunity to look at the comprehensive capital plan to see what was scheduled for fiscal '24. And there's like $12 million on the big plan for that year. This year, there were 7 million, and we opted to prioritize almost 3 million of those. But I think what's going to happen next year, to the extent that I can predict, where's my crystal ball? I think what we would have to do is perhaps limit the capital spending next year to maybe $500,000 to put it back on the tax rate. I mean, as it stands now, we're going to go down 50 cents this year. We went down 77 cents last year. It's $1.27 in 2 fiscal years, which is remarkable, and I am trying to, I redrafted the budget message that's going to go on the website soon when I submit the final budget. The receipt of this ARPA money is an absolutely fantastic benefit for the town. It allows us to do enormous number of projects. I don't mean to digress from your particular question. Obviously, there'll be an impact, but I'm trying to suggest in my budget message, and I think for future planning, emphasis on the reduction of $1.27, which is basically ARPA money, put to its priority use. Yeah, it might go up a quarter, because I think for every 100,000, it's a nickel. Pam's calculation was 1% is 160,000, and so for us, I think every 25,000, every 100,000 is a nickel on the tax rate. Right.
Yeah, because every million is 50 cents.
Okay, so if we had $500,000 in capital projects next year on the tax rate, you'd be looking at
25 cents.
I-
But, you know,
If on the heels of a potential $1.27 deduction decrease this year, who's going to argue with it?
well, somebody will. But,
I know, but realistically,
right, well, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Plus, we don't have any, well, we do have some options on the ARPA money. We can just throw it all into the general fund. But I don't really want to do that. That's not my plan. I don't think that's the best use of the money because we have to have it in place by the end of fiscal '24, by December of '24. And it has to be spent by the end of '26, calendar year '26. It's in-
What's the difference between in place and spent, Mary?
Well, I think under contract is what they.
You know, appropriated or?
Well, it's not appropriated, that's the thing. Even the money that we got last year, it was almost 2.5 million. We did 3 major water infrastructure projects, but the council didn't have to appropriate that. It's essentially a grant.
Yeah.
So there will be an impact, but we won't be spending as much, I don't think, because as an aside, the Heritage Park, I believe, is going to be funded out of CPC. I've personally reached out to all 9 members of the committee. They're meeting on the 5th of May. That item is on their agenda. So I'm hopeful that they will positively vote on the 495 for the design phase of that project, which would eliminate the need of using probably any free cash, or maybe 100,000 at most.
Yeah, that was going to be my question in terms of how much free cash is in that assumption.
Yeah.
Well, because the ARPA, the total capital was 2.9 and change. The ARPA was, say, 2.3 and a half, close to 2.4. So we'd need 500,000 out of free cash, but now I'm thinking maybe 0 out of free cash.
even better.
That's great.
So let me put words in your mouth. Based on everything you've just said, is it fair to say that you feel it's worth the risk to spend the ARPA money to eliminate our obligation for the almost 3 million in capital and hedge that an increase next year, AKA cliff,
Yeah.
may be very minimal? Is that a fair?
That's
Okay.
exactly the,
All right, I'm sorry, Kathy, I thought you were going to say something else. Say that again then.
And take a note at the same time.
I'll just try to remember what you said. Is it fair to say that your recommendation, based on what Chris just said, what about this cliff?
Yeah.
You still feel confident that, or you feel confident that the use of that 10 million in ARPA right now to be pushed as much as possible toward the capital projects to almost eliminate a balance, which would then drop the tax rate, is worth doing now while we have the money. And it's worth the hedge against a small cliff next year, perhaps, with maybe a 25% increase in the tax rate, because you'll try to recommend scaling back some of the capital projects that would be undertaken next year.
precisely.
Try to remember what I said.
So I guess
See, I think you have to use the ARPA money.
I agree.
I think this is an incredible opportunity for the town of East Long Meadow to accomplish dozens of good things that are necessary, if not overdue. And if not now, when? We're never going to have an infusion of cash like this. This is exactly what it was intended for.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity that it seems almost, to me anyway,
Too good to be true.
Right. It's to me, it's like you hit the lottery and you took the money from whatever, how large the jackpot was, and you just put it in your bank book and you just every day look at that number and smile, but you don't do anything with it.
well, they say there are people like that.
Really?
Yes.
I'm not related
Build up
to
a big
any.
nest egg, don't like to spend it.
So this use, the proposed use of the ARPA money for the capital, that will exhaust the remaining amount of ARPA.
Yes.
Okay.
However,
So
we're getting more money in. Just today, we got notice that there'll be an additional 327,000 on a program, from a program called WRAP, Winter Recovery something, that'll supplement our Chapter 90 funding. Because I had Don's comment in mind from last week when you said something about, well, the streets are, something that we travel on each and every day and it affects everybody. So our Chapter 90 is usually around 580 or 90,000.
Not
So it'll be
much.
almost $1 million with this
Hey, another
infusion.
gift, right?
Yes,
So
and.
is this next fiscal year? Or?
No, it's coming due right now. We've been approved. The governor has passed it.
RAP, REP?
WRAP, winter. Well, I have it here and I'll find it for you, yeah.
Would that change Bruce's budget for this year? I mean, this coming year?
No, it's just-
This would just be an
Well,
additional.
no, I'm just thinking I assume that unless the definition, I guess
He's
it was
got
the
it.
definition was not being, all right.
It'll allow him to do more road work.
It doesn't, it won't.
Cover that
He
one
can't
that they
use it
changed
to
the
take away
definition of.
something else, right?
I guess my question is, we'll still have a cliff next year, depending on how much is necessary to pay operating budget for capital.
I disagree,
Oh,
Jim. I don't think
so.
we'll have a cliff. Yeah, I took comfort in the fact that Mary just mentioned, maybe we won't have $1 million or $1.5 million appropriation, but I do believe we'd be able to do a $500,000 appropriation.
It
into capital.
wasn't very comforting, the amount she looked at me coming up
Oh.
for FY '24.
Yeah.
We didn't buy ourselves a lot of catch-up
No.
to it.
But don't forget, the levy limit will go up by 2.5% plus new growth. And, there may be more room in the budget than what we perceive at this very moment, because we're struggling with F-23.
Mm.
But, let's face it, none of the numbers are ever final until they're final. So, the turnbacks might be good next year, come the month of June.
Because we don't
Be
know.
optimistic, Jim.
Well, no, I guess if you were to twist my arm, what I'd probably rationalize as you're reducing the tax rate by 50 cents. The theory is, do you have the taxpayer pay more now to avoid, paying a little bit, more later, or do you take the benefit of it? They pay less now, and they may bump a little bit higher next year, but if you look at it over the course of 2 or 3 years, they would have gotten the benefit of the reduction by the use of those funds.
Yeah.
Well, we also
earlier.
have reevaluations, which is it still going to be about a 6%?
On the
Last
residential.
time I talked to the Director of Assessing, the residential piece, she is comfortable, she said, based on last year's work, comfortable at 6%, until the state certifies it.
So in that piece, we don't know where the housing market's going to go. I tend to think, and I will tell you, I am one of those people who, much to my husband's chagrin, would probably win a lot of money and say, I'm putting it over here for the what if. But there comes a point where, as a town, we constantly hear about capital projects. And to Mary's point, we can see visible change. We're running on things that they're broken. We hear about it. I mean, fuel pumps aren't working. These are basic things that are wise investments. And maybe we do close our eyes and stand at the edge of the cliff, and hopefully it's just a little step. Or we cross the bridge when we get there. I'm sure town council will start to hear about a cliff quickly if things go sideways in the economy, but this is.
And I don't really think of it as a
Good
cliff,
money.
it's just, it could potentially create a larger increase than we typically would see in, the taxes.
Right, we could.
But that's why my message is geared to, let's appreciate the significance of this legislation. I mean, it is an enormous act. We only got 4.7 million. Springfield got $127 million. So this is where I'm pretty excited about the prospect of being able to fund these 19 projects with that money. I think it's the best use of it. We have a list of capital projects, many of which are completed, and there are some balances due, are credit balances in those accounts. I spoke to Olga just yesterday about, let's clean that up, and whatever those funds are, they can go back into the general fund or back into, or be transferred into some other capital account. So I think it's really hard to estimate, even at $500,000, and say, well, it would be a 25-cent tax increase, because there's going to be money there.
Yeah.
And to the point about the reassessment, the reval, and the continued growth, it's a year behind. So even if things kind of take a nosedive, we're still going to be using figures from 23 in 22 and 23, 23 and 24.
I would be willing to move off this topic.
Okay.
Okay, plus I won't be your manager, so you're gonna have somebody else anyway. But I'll be available to
Damn.
answer the questions
Okay.
if it doesn't come true.
The next item is in the accounting department wanting a new position, which was pretty well backed up in all our paperwork. The question that arisen was the $25,000 increase in the audit fee.
That was a formatting issue on the worksheet I sent you. It was supposed to wrap the text, and it did, it cut it off. The actual increase for the audit was $4,000 to $32,005, which is for the ARPA money. There's another single audit that we have to perform, and so the auditors felt they had to charge us for that.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
Which question is that, Chris?
That's the
135.
second one, account 135. So it's a separate audit for the ARPA money.
They do have to do a single audit, like with the schools, and
And so how much is the fee? What's the final number for the fee?
the total fee for, we're expecting for the audit will be $32,500.
Okay. Do we still have Scanlon?
We still have scale.
And this is a have to, Steve.
What's that?
This is a
have to,
have
Have to, yes. The government will frown
Okay.
very much.
Item 145, the collector's new position, is that a full-time or a part-time, Mary?
Part-time,
Part-time,
and it's essentially for backup, there's,
okay.
Is it 19 hours, maybe?
well, yeah, so there'd be not a benefited position.
Thank you.
The legal services, which I think is kind of, that's number 151, is kind of tied into 220, because we were talking about a union contract, and we were unclear afterwards whether that was going to take place in this fiscal year or the next.
Probably both. But the main reason that line item was estimated at a higher number is because you are going to have a new town manager. And I don't mean to sound boastful, but there's a lot of times when I have not had the necessity to reach out to council. We sign contracts, hundreds, millions of dollars. Issues come in the office all the time that I think a new manager will have to reach out to council for. So that's the primary reason for that. We think we put in 20,000 as an increase. To your specific question about the fire department, their contract expires June 30 of this year. They did ask to initiate negotiations, but the chief is unavailable, and I don't want to negotiate without him.
Okay.
So at a minimum, I think what we would do is meet to just see if they want to give me their initial proposal. But I don't want to get into the real meat of negotiations that I can't finish.
Understood.
And we will need counsel for that. And I think we're already in excess of legal for this year, but this year I think was somewhat of an anomaly with all the negotiations that took so long.
I'm remiss, I made an error to the top at
Right.
number 122. We have discussed the appropriation for an admin support or grant writing, and I'm sure you read that little blurb at the top.
I did, several times.
And you're being the one person that can add to the budget, because no one else can, not the council. Even if we recommended it, wouldn't go anywhere. However, I remember last year where the president of the council advocated to get that extra support for a town manager for the office and to ease the burden of the workload, because it is as you know, and you've experienced it, a very large workload. So we, in talking, some of us have suggested that we continue with that $35,000 in the town manager's budget for the support position. And last year's appropriation certainly illustrates the benefits, because the person that you hired brought in $200,000 in grants to the town.
And then some.
And it certainly justified that position. And I think, you have you're the secretary in your office that answers the phone and handles the paperwork and so forth that you delegate. However, I think a support position, and I'm not the only one that thinks that way, would be justified. And I was wondering if you could be persuaded to add that to your final version of the budget.
Well, I've given this a lot of thought, and I appreciate the consideration that you're expressing. To put your mind at ease, a little bit, I hope, I moved that position to Steve's office in December because I thought I was leaving the town service in December. And I didn't want her to have no supervision and no oversight and no guidance and mentoring, et cetera, et cetera. So I moved her into Steve's department, continued to work with her. She was very instrumental in the master plan open house that we had. She worked with Bethany until Bethany left us. And she has a financial, she's studying for her master's
in accountancy.
in business administration. So she was an excellent fit and did some grant writing and was kind of a Karen of all trades. So that position is in his budget. And on the piece about the support for the town manager, I agree that this town needs a deputy. But my thought there was, whoever the new person is going to take at least 3 months or so to get acclimated, unless they're coming from another town that's very similar to this. And I didn't want to presuppose that they would have the same thoughts about things as I have.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I would just leave it so that they can determine. Part of my rationale last year, because I looked at the memo I wrote in support of that position, was that we had a brand new HR person. Now we have a brand new planning director who's very capable, by the way. He's doing great things already. Our HR director has now got 1.5 years under her belt. That, was only 2 or 3 months last year at this time. And there was the COVID overlay, which is still with us, unfortunately. But I think I said in my supporting documents for the position last year that I didn't know if it was a one-off, if all these things were coming together like a perfect storm. And unfortunately, with what happened in the fall, in terms of our local government, I never had an opportunity to gather the evidence that I thought would support the position going forward, because once December came and went, I was basically a month-to-month employee. I thought I was leaving in December, then I thought I was leaving in January, then I thought I was leaving in February, and I'm pretty sure I'm leaving in June.
We're not.
So, I just, the position's necessary, without a doubt, but I think the function that Karen did with the grant and then the return on the investment of her part-time salary will continue, unfortunately, with a different person, because she cannot come back due to her own circumstances. But so that's why I didn't put it in, because I just figured a new manager should have the right to figure out what his or her needs are.
If the new manager says that he or she needs administrative support, what would be their avenue to get the monies to fund a position? Would they then have to go to the council? HR would have to do a job description, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that would be the process.
Yeah. So you're telling us very nicely, good idea, but
Well,
Sounds like you're telling us to hold on it. Because the new town manager might have a different design, different perspective.
I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself because the duties and the responsibilities are there, but you gotta have the right person too, and I'm not sure even that 18 hours a week is sufficient. You know, it really should be full-time, because we didn't get a lot of traction on the job advertisement last year. We didn't hire Karen until September 1st. So I was just thinking with all the moving parts, and particularly didn't want to make judgments on behalf of the new manager. But I think, yeah, you could go, if they needed it for 6 months, if they found somebody part-time even, you could use free cash for that.
Well,
I don't know, I mean,
no, well said.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot. Sorry. All right, that was a very nicely worded no. Item number 152, how many FTEs will there be in the HR department?
assuming you allow this new position, there'll be 4. There'll be the director/manager. There's a benefits administrator. We have a generalist now, Mariola Rivera. And this 4th person would be kind of an assistant to benefits as well as to Mariola. And I think the rationale that Joan offered in her memo was primarily the school function. So we basically have 3 people, one of whom is brand new this week. We have a new benefits administrator. They're overworked. I mean, it's, and the consequences of not having a capable HR division are significant.
Item number 210, Eunice number 210, a police contract, which I believe shows up in the paperwork that Steve gave to us today. Can you tell us about is there any change in the number of sergeants? Or is it just strictly salaries?
The reduction in the salary line item is because their current agreement, the one we just reached, eliminates a sergeant position for 1 year only in order to make the lieutenant position. That was the ultimate issue that needed to be resolved before we could sign off on the contract.
But it's ratified?
It is ratified, yeah.
So we did get a lieutenant.
Well, yes, there'll be an assessment center, but it'll, Chief Williams is working on putting that together now.
So just to take a bit of perspective, so the contract has eliminated a sergeant's position and replaced that with a lieutenant's position.
Correct.
So from a year from now, I'm guessing Chief Williams is going to ask for a sergeant position.
The contract says they will get their 6th sergeant back. After 1 year.
Contract. Well,
After 1 year.
that's an interesting strategy. I mean, wow, I'm a little taken aback.
But also, can we talk about the contract now?
Absolutely, sure.
Another big piece in the negotiations was the town's exit from civil service. And that's been, for new hires. Certainly the folks that are on the payroll now are protected by civil service while they work for the town. So it was a combination of give and take.
Okay, no,
I
appreciate it.
think there was one stipend that was removed also.
Yes, we took away their stipend for Narcan. So that saved us about $6,000 a year. The police reform bill is imposed a lot of new duties on current policing, and that's why the chief was so adamant about his need for a lieutenant. And it's a non-union position, which was another stumbling block.
Right.
Union obviously didn't want to lose members. Overall, I think it's a very, very good
It's a
contract.
very solid.
For the town.
But I think we need to keep in mind, as we talk about the possible,
That's, yeah.
it's not an appropriate word, cliff, but that is going to be a definite increase in next year's budget.
It's an automatic increase.
And the problem, and part of the rationale for reinstituting it next year is, we have 6 now. We have 3 shifts. So between time off, vacations, sickness, injury, days off, The overtime, as you probably all remember, one of the chiefs in the recent past had a problem, at least it was reported in the newspaper, that the overtime budget led to his demise in some regard. And I would hate to see that happen to Chief Williams, because
Oh, yes.
he's, in my view, he's doing a terrific job in every aspect of what he's up there for. So I didn't want his overtime budget to be used against him and that's why the sergeant being removed. We negotiated so that the lieutenant can backfill into sergeant's roles. The union didn't really want that initially. They want a non-union person doing union work, which you can understand. It's a legitimate labor issue, but we resolved them all, so.
Well, it sounds like it was quite a, as you said, Kathy, good give and take.
It's a good hybrid of what the union wanted as well as what the town wanted.
Congratulations. for
Yeah,
getting
really.
That was a big one. And it went on, to Mary's credit,
Yeah.
and also probably to the legal service line item. They were ready for arbitration. Or
Right, we had done, and the potential there was $40,000 or $50,000 to sit with labor management.
Sounds like you came up with a lot of creative solutions there.
Yeah.
Congratulations, yeah.
Item 220, Fire Department, does anyone have any questions on that?
That includes a new deputy chief, correct?
the request.
Yes,
request,
the
right.
request, yeah, which will, next week.
Yeah, next
we'll
week we're gonna
have
see the
The
chiefs.
chief with us.
Okay,
He also wants 4 new firefighters.
Correct.
Which would be, and I can, if you want to save time today, you can deal with him next week. He's
No.
prepared.
No, tell us what you know.
Well, just that the 4 new hires would allow him to have 7 individuals assigned to each ambulance group. Right now, he's got 6. The minimum you have to have is 5. So when one guy is out of those 6 on the current teams, he's having trouble with people answering callbacks and coming back in. So that's why, I mean, it's for kind of his future planning. But when he has to backfill, he's having a severe problem. And sometimes if they're out on 2, if 2 ambulance calls come in at once, just creates
Yeah.
potential problems. So, but I'm sure Chief Morissette can elaborate better than I can on that.
Can we safely assume he might be paying those out of the ambulance?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Yes.
I think there was a decrease in that personnel.
Yeah.
Up like 0.3%.
And I think the deputy that he's looking for would be 50% out of the ambulance fund as well.
Yeah.
Is that a non-union position also?
Well, it's, yes, they've already negotiated that.
Okay, number 519, the Health Department. The question that came up was the $30,000 consultant fee to explore the GIC.
Yeah, that's a mistake. I didn't approve that at all. It should never have been included in the budget.
Oh,
My thought there is, there's a lawyer that I got to know a little bit through the work with the Veterans District, and he represents some of the towns in east of us, and they left Scantic, I guess, at one time and did go to GIC. So my first thought was maybe we can get this advice for less. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, we don't have the capacity in HR to hire the consultant, to oversee what the consultant does, to monitor the consultant's reports and implement them. So it would be spending the money and then really not having the infrastructure in place to adequately use it. So I just said no.
So Mary, will you or Steve be making that adjustment to your?
It's reflected in the one I gave you.
It's reflected.
Good.
Okay,
That's what got us the extra 2 cents, I think, on the tax rate.
okay. Item number 610, the library. I know we're going to be looking for a new director. Does the current appropriation meet the state requirements? Does?
I checked with them. In fact, we're interviewing Monday, the 9th, we have a search committee in place for a library-specific search committee, and they're interviewing 4 candidates on May 9th. So hopefully we'll have a director shortly after that.
Wonderful. Okay, 6:30 is recreation. Is that a new full-time position, the assistant director?
Yes, the way Donna described it, I think her write-up is in your package also. You know, recreation is one of those so-called soft departments. You know, I guess it's not guns and ammo and fire trucks, but it serves such a vital purpose.
Yes.
Donna and her staff currently, I mean, they work 7 days a week, and it's not 8 to 4. Half of the, I mean, they're at nighttime games, they're coordinating on weekends. They just put so many programs together that they deserve this help.
I mean, if you look at the newsletter or whatever, their monthly bulletin, it reads like a professional magazine with all of the offerings. When I just go back 15 years, you had your basic sports and that was it. It's just an amazing program that they run.
And I think for quality of life, it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
And I still remember that when we talked about Heritage Park, the amount of people that they're servicing. The last thing we want to do is start telling young families, sorry, we can't staff that, we can't do that because. Yeah.
Well, and they look like they are doing, whereas to Kathy's point, 15 years ago, it was all youth oriented.
Now it's for
Now it's,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
541, the Council on Aging. There was a question that was raised on regrading and how that impacted the increases.
No, you know, I listened to that meeting and I heard your various comments about was there regrading, and I think Kathy, you thought maybe we had gone out for a study, but we haven't. There are certain isolated positions across the town's staff. I think Olga Gomez got regraded. I think Mary O'Connor was up. And these were things that, these were individuals, and one woman from, I think Judy out of DPW, their department heads made a specific request because of extra responsibility that had been assumed by these people in larger duties. And so it was on a case-by-case thing. The grading that shows up in the notes that Steve has on the particular line items are, you know, over the course of the last 18 months where this contract was unsettled, many of the people that work here passed to a new grade under their existing old contract. So the regrading isn't anything other than the 3 specifics I've mentioned, where we actually changed someone's grade, but the other grade changes were just the natural progression through the existing contracts and step increases within the grades. So those are all rolled into these salary adjustments that you see that seem large, particularly the one here in the library, but most of the library staff is in the professional unit of the former town employees unit. So they're all, they have higher education and greater responsibility. So that's where the salary increase came from. And I probably felt like a little double whammy because of the retroactivity aspect of it.
Thank you. This question is probably more for Steve than it is for you, Mary. Item number 910, the payroll taxes. Now that we have contract settlements, that number's been adjusted in your best.
It's adjusted, as we know now in the package, just got the total of all 3 categories, the payroll taxes, the workers' comp, and the health and life is $8,830,896.27. The breakdown is the payroll taxes, which has the impact of the contracts, went up to $583,703.29.
Okay.
And workers' comp is at $228,033, and the health and life, when we took the 30 out, is $8,019,159.88.
So that's all in there.
That's all in the door.
That's all it is.
We have, with the draft you got today, incorporate any changes we have through today.
So Steve, we're at a 4.71 increase, 4.71, am I correct?
No, I believe it's, overall, it might be 4.4. You're in the ballpark. It's 4.4 overall when you include like OPEB and stabilization. The general fund is 5.6.
I'm confused, am I reading the right thing?
That's the source. If you go to the page 17, or page 11, sorry.
Thank you
11,
very much.
12.
Oh, thank you for that, I appreciate it, I see it. My mistake.
But there's a lot of stuff I've just been throwing myself, I understand completely.
Sorry, Jeff.
So overall, it's at 4.4, okay.
Well, at least we're not crawling for $25
No.
for the tax rate.
No, it'll be under
Excellent.
20 this year,
Yeah.
be 19 something. I think it'll be even less because this budget from the state, I think, is going
Yeah.
to supplement our revenue. And I think when the reval comes through,
We're at 1979 now, Steve, yeah, that's excellent.
The increase in the values might drive it down a little bit.
It could depend on how much they go up. To Mary's point earlier, she's right, when we're here next year, as you know, because we're doing it based on January of this year.
Yeah.
It's kind of the beginning of the big rise here now. The other thing towards Jim's, I'm gonna say plateau, that he might step off of.
Plateau.
We don't use the other word.
Step up.
Step up. The part of, when you borrow too, that's often hidden, but is getting more and more prevalent, is the interest cost associated with bonding. That goes directly into the tax rate too. So if we borrowed now, that would be in there now. And to Mary's point, I think the money was designed just for these type projects, long-lasting projects. And in my relatively short time here, a lot of the projects that don't get approved
Yeah.
show up next year anyways. So, and now we get a chance, we went through with, on the capital committee, went through and picked the people coming in requesting them, came in and they prioritized before they knew where any funding was coming. These are what's most important to them. And we're able to do it without hitting the town coffers at all. It's just it's a wonderful opportunity.
well, the thing is too, to supplement that just a little bit, most of these projects, like the ones we did last year, the water main stuff, they last 100 years. 100 years.
Yeah.
Gotcha, yeah.
And
We would never know.
anybody,
They can say anything they want,
anybody
Mary.
who reads my new budget is gonna read it. And, the trucks that the DPW uses, well,
Oh.
I mean, the floors fall out before they ask for a new one. I mean,
You
these
saw
trucks
that.
go 20, 23 years. And it's all interwoven because the equipment that Bruce needs to mow the fields, if he doesn't have sharp blades to mow the infield grass, then you've got 62 unhappy kids and 134 parents.
Yeah.
So, everything working together, we're on the cusp, I think, of so many good things. We really are. I mean, it's right there for the taking.
I just want to make a comment, the crafting this.
Don't bring me
budget-
down now, okay?
No, it's the opposite.
All right.
The crafting this budget, we were at 1979, correct? That's the lowest we will be since 2014. That's amazing with all we've gone through in 8 years. That is just amazing that we're crafting a budget that could do that. And
It's
you could-
testament
possibly
to
might
the
even drop
employees.
even more, huh?
And also, I mean, from how far back,
2014 was what it was.
Think of how society, the complexity of
Right.
society since 2014. Our population has grown.
Right.
So which affects our
Over
police, our
16,000.
fire, our schools,
Exactly.
yeah.
The wear and tear on our infrastructure.
This is, and I like the budget we're looking at too.
Are there any additional questions for Mary?
But she was so positive, I hate to ask anything.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I know.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
My pleasure, sharing your knowledge and your time with us. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, as
can
always,
stay.
Yes.
So it's
Magicians.
3:23. I don't know that I think we should probably think about what we're gonna do next
Yeah,
week,
let's do that.
rather than try to get into a discussion as to our reactions.
I felt like some like to sit on it, come back a week from now to kind of let it percolate in our brain. Yeah.
Are we gonna stipulate any times for the fire?
Well, I was
police?
gonna say, I think we need some time, number one, to go over the
This new
revised
version.
version.
Yes.
We need some time to talk about the school budget and any follow-up that we had here
Right.
with the town manager budgets. And then, so I don't know that we need 45 minutes apiece for
I do think
police
So we
and
need the
fire.
police chief, which seems everything's already crafted.
Yeah, that's like 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
So do we call in the police and the fire, or do we
They
not?
can join us by Zoom, I would think, if they so choose.
Do we
Um,
have enough questions for the police and
I
fire?
really don't.
I think for fire, I'd like to hear about
Fire
how they're gonna,
might be
the
good,
personnel,
Right, I'd like to hear about the fire because
Yeah.
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 they're still on the cusp of negotiations.
And the
But
police
the
are
police, but
pretty.
I don't also want to insult Chief Williams either by saying, nah, you're fine.
Well, if we're doing it.
He won't be.
because
No, I
we're
think
not
they'd
really-
like
if we're
that.
doing it
I
because
would
we're
like
not
that
having
if I
an
were
issue with the
department
budget, I
head.
don't think he would come today.
His the contract was the biggest nugget in all of his, and that seems as though it's resolved, so.
Well, they're both chiefs are on notice for May 5th. I've told them both that you anticipated seeing them, but,
Oh, maybe
Do you want to do 15 minutes apiece? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
why don't we do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I would argue we do that, well.
And they could be on Zoom, they don't have,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah,
if.
they can come
Do you
by.
want to do it later in our meeting?
Still out.
Thrash out.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I would say maybe,
Didn't have a vacation.
we start
2:15.
Never left town. One of my traveling
2:15
partners.
to 2:30 to 2:45 to still leave us
I was here
and
every day.
time to get through it. So,
Sounds reasonable.
so the thought would be, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Both.
So when we start off next week, I think what we probably want to do is after the minutes, well, I think probably it's most important that we talk about the school budget, what our thoughts are. So I guess I would say that probably is our
Right.
second
Yeah.
item. And then I think we need to just make sure we understand what
Please.
this updated one
Yes.
is telling us.
Right.
So the sources and uses.
So we need Steve here for that, correct?
Uh,
Oh, no.
Well, Steve typically joins us.
He'll be
in
on
now,
Zoom.
but yeah.
Okay,
And then, of course, well, the schools and there was Mary's budget. So I suppose technically we ought to say, do we have any questions on Mary's budgets that are lingering? There may not be that much discussion for that, but.
Mhm.
And the issue, if you said it while I was writing, I apologize, the stipends for the school committee.
Yes,
We need to
yeah,
do that.
school and stipends, yeah, as well, get that out of the way. And then, we can go with, what did you suggest, Chris, like 2:15 and
Yeah.
2:30?
2:15 to 2:30 for the fire department, and maybe, I think with the police chief from 2:30
Yeah.
to 20 minutes of 3.
Yeah.
And that'll still give us 20 minutes for further discussion.
Right. And to figure out, because after that one, we've got, we'll have to decide, do we need to talk to the school committee again? Or do we need to talk to anybody else again? That's our 5/12 meeting is kind of open right now. It's
Right.
to whatever we figure we need
Yeah.
to do. So that works for me. Does that work for people?
Absolutely, very effective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then any other items we want to discuss today?
Oh, I'm just gonna ask Kathy, when's the next council meeting?
The 10th.
So that's when Mary will be presenting her final budget, or is she gonna do it before May 1st?
We don't have a meeting, I'm looking at Marilyn now to see.
We have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. But that's not, I don't think that's on the, I haven't seen the agenda.
Because the
The
charter,
10th.
Is that new?
No, I saw it on Facebook.
well, the charter says she has to present the final to the council by May 1st.
May 1st.
Which she may send to you by the end of this week.
She sounded, she was talking about a new summary sheet now, wasn't she?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
she
gonna put up on the website.
Because we also have public hearing.
I haven't seen it.
Message.
Yeah.
Kathy's going on the website to see.
No, I'm just looking in my email,
I don't,
town email,
I haven't seen anything
Yes, we'll be
in
good.
that today.
She's presenting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That'd be good for us to know.
let's just call Jeannie and find out.
We can go see her.
Well, I can get an answer right now, though.
we were gonna, because the next meeting in May would be our presentation at least for the council, would be our presentation to the council, what our recommendations are.
At the meeting, the latter part.
Yeah.
At the end of May.
And when is,
We have a.
have we set public hearing? Does that usually happen
That's
when
the
you present?
yeah.
Same time.
You Okay.
I think last year,
Where?
our presentation also acted as the
The public
hearing.
hearing. Yeah, that's,
Although,
Yes, I think
yeah, I
they
think
did.
it usually
did it,
runs.
so that it, but then they all vote, but then the vote was that evening as
We
well.
jammed it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I spoke with Janie and Mike about the necessity to, because right now, let me back up. We've been just on one meeting a month, and I talked to both of them about the fact that we had targeted the 24th as a potential hearing night. So whether or not the date changes, they're both amenable to that second meeting.
I mean, the other thing
is
is
that
that.
a Tuesday evening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary's presentation of the final budget would also be a logical public hearing
Right.
date as well.
And just to clarify
Yeah,
what I
but
saw,
then the council usually.
Hey there. I'm in the finance meeting now, and we want a clarification on something. Is our next council meeting on the 10th? May 10th, no meeting before that? Okay. No. Okay, because Marilyn was sitting in our, with us today at the meeting, and she said she saw something on Facebook about a meeting next Tuesday.
it's a public hearing for the Board of Health, the petition that we got.
Right. So is it a special?
That's supposed to be on the 10th.
It is, when's the 10th? That's what.
A week, no, next,
May 3rd is Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the 10th, my apologies, because you were all saying the 10th. so
okay,
that's
she
what I'm
just
saying.
realized her mistake.
Just fire me.
Okay.
I'll gladly go home.
That authority.
Right, she thought that the public.
Look, I had a birthday.
The petition about the planning board, the health department
Right.
was next Tuesday, and she had her Tuesdays pushed together. All right, I'll be over in a few minutes. All right, thanks.
My apologies, guys.
And you can't quit either.
Oh,
So I assume Mary could probably just distribute that budget to the town.
I think that's all she really has to do, because she's made one
Yeah,
Right.
presentation to us already.
yeah, okay.
So, and we can kind of clarify that next week. So any other discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oops, so does this have to be a roll
Yeah.
call?
We're still.
All right.
Still-
I vote yes.
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned.